TikTok made you think it's cool to be sad.
One of the most commonly shared human experiences, apart from yelling into a fan as a kid to make yourself sound like a robot,
T-Pain,
is the feeling of being sad for no reason. It could happen right when you wake up or slowly onset as the sun goes down, but no matter the time, the experience is still the same. You get this lingering sense that life has no real rhyme or reason to it, and everything positive you've been doing up until this point suddenly no longer carries the same weight of significance.
Damn, dude.
When you get sad for no reason, you might have the urge to isolate and distract yourself from these intrusive thoughts through mindless stimulation. And in doing so, this coping mechanism may actually provide the relief that you need until the feeling inevitably passes. But what if that feeling starts to
Nigga, go outside.
overstay its welcome? What if several days pass by, and even through the acts of forcing yourself outside, committing to healthy habits, and unplugging from stimulation,
Let's pause for a moment. How many of you guys experience waves of sadness? Moments where you feel like you can't properly express how you feel, where you feel like nobody understands you. Next question. How long does that usually last for y'all? I feel like it's a time frame. Like, I feel like at because I'm up a lot. So at 3 to 5 a.m., I go through those waves of I'll be looking in the mirror, but fucking disappointing bitch, why aren't you?
Damn.
Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you accomplished this? You feel me? So nighttime, them darkness hours.
Scary hours.
still have this overwhelming nihilistic urge to stay stuck
demons.
in the unhappiness. This phenomenon of almost desiring to be sad has most likely been around forever, but it's only recently risen in its romanticization in the past decade or so.
I don't like being sad. I don't know why these niggas be. I don't know why y'all do that.
Today, I'd like to explore this new rise in mental illness, the effects of sharing our negative experiences online, and why many young people seem to love getting addicted to the idea of being sad. Since the beginning of our existence, humans have been trying to explain and express the occasional but ever-present torment that stays knocking on our brain's door. Before modern science's ability to inspect the body, analyze patterns, and give firm solutions to our symptoms, one of the best ways of dealing with the more negative aspects of life was through media representation. Several hundred years ago, playwrights such as Shakespeare and poets such as Edgar Allan Poe used their respective type of media to try and formulate their mental distress that they either observed or went through themselves. And while I'm sure they decided to embark on these creative endeavors because they genuinely enjoyed them, I can only imagine that this output almost came as a necessity to understand what the hell was going on with them. Shakespeare's son died from what is thought to be of the bubonic plague at the age of just 11 years old.
Damn.
And it's been speculated that a few of his works might have been inspired by his agony. For example, in Shakespeare's play King Lear, when Lear recognizes his daughter is dead, he says, "No, no, no, life. Why should a dog, a horse, a rat have life, and thou no breath at all? Thou'lt come no more. Never, 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 never." This could draw similarities to what Shakespeare might have been feeling during the time of his son's death, and he wanted to express that through his creative work. By the same token,
listen, I don't think there's a greater pain than losing a child. There is no greater pain, right? And I feel for anybody who's ever lost a kid.
Facts.
Or losing your throat goat. Somebody time out Newski, bro.
Edgar Allan Poe wrote the poem Alone after his beloved foster mother died in 1829 as a way to put into words just how lonely he must have felt. While it can be argued that these tragic poems and plays were attempting to aestheticize depression and grief, I don't think that's what the intention of the creators were at all. And because of that, people were not reading these poems or watching these plays thinking they'd come out of it with a better understanding of their traumas. They were mostly engaging with these forms of media simply just to be moved by them in some way, whether that form of movement be entertainment, sadness, or joy. And this is going to be important to understand when we start to compare the media during this time to the media we consume now. Speaking of the media that we consume, I'm going to go over a little later in this video how videos and memes are shaping the way we perceive mental illnesses. And although that's brought a lot of pros and cons, I think it's definitely a pro that we now
This nigga dropping an ad.
have access to so many creative online tools at our disposal. And that is why I am
Get the fuck out of my face.
to the video. During the time of Shakespeare and Poe, and the couple hundred years that followed it, there was still a lot of stigma surrounding mental illness. If you had what we now
I just know it smelled crazy.
couple hundred years that followed it, there was still a lot of stigma surrounding
Niggas at the beach fully dressed. I know you niggas must have. Oh my god. Sand all in your dresses. I just know this shit sucked. Thank God I was born in the time I was, bro. A lot of niggas bitch and moan and complain, but you could have been born in 1960, where if you go outside and be like, W milk, now you getting lynched.
Facts.
Surrounding mental illness. If you had what we now refer to as conditions such as schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, or some other serious mental health problem, you were seen as either insane or just plain weak. Because even the most extreme of mental illnesses often do not manifest themselves in physical ways. They're much more deceptive. And because of that, the people who don't understand these illnesses find them a lot less believable than something physical. But starting around the mid to late 20th century, there was a big push in the West to start to destigmatize mental illness. This was done not only so we could better understand the causes and develop better treatments, but also to help those who are mentally well empathize and understand with those who are mentally struggling. And what better way to attempt to demonstrate realistic and humanized versions of mental illness than in one of the most influential pieces of pop culture at the time, film. Film has always done a pretty good job at representing the trends of current society, but in a dramatized way. So the challenge for filmmakers during this time was that they had to combine their inclination to stretch the truth with portraying mental illness in a pragmatic way. Perhaps the most famous depiction of mental illness in 90s film was the psychological thriller Silence of the Lambs, starring Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster.
This nigga looks so crazy.
In the film,
who cut him?
One of the main characters, Hannibal Lecter, is portrayed as a psychopath with superior intellect and, dare I say, charm. And due to the popularity of this movie, the average person actually started to associate psychopathy with intelligence and charm. But studies have shown that this association is far from reality. In a paper titled The Hannibal Lecter Myth, which was conducted due to the impact of the film, it was concluded that there is actually an inverse relationship between verbal intelligence and psychopathy, meaning that psychopaths are usually the exact opposite of what was portrayed in Anthony Hopkins' role. This is important because film doesn't just represent trends like I stated earlier, it also influences trends in the way we think and interact with our environment, whether we are consciously aware of it.
Man, there was no trend that I felt worse for than when niggas was watching Black Panther and they'd go up to niggas and be like,
bruh, that shit was embarrassing.
Set us back 15 years, bro. Wakanda
forever.
Like, if you don't get that shit the fuck out my face. Bro, you not from Wakanda, bro. You niggas started a trend and you had white people. What the fuck, nigga? What? Man, you from fucking Bronx, nigga. Niggas talking about some. Man, if you don't get the fuck away from me with that shit.
Or not. So whether the
nigga asked me if Wakanda was real. Never forgive them niggas.
The director was intentionally trying to do this or not, this film and others like it during this time did in a way glamorize being a psychopath. But it certainly has not stopped there. If anything, glamorizing psychopathy, depression, and now even being a serial killer is only more prominent in TV shows and films than it was back then. Shows like 13 Reasons Why, Dahmer, or American Horror Story portray characters with severe psychological problems as having this sort
of what's wrong with this nigga?
Of misunderstood enchantment to them, making the viewer become reeled into the idea of having a mental illness. In fact, there was even a study done that showed the amount of unalives of people aged 10 to 17 increased significantly after the release of the first season of 13 Reasons Why. Now, I will say there is a lot of speculation as to whether this season really did
said 13 Reasons had a niggas in it so cool.
Cause this, or if it's just a correlation, and I'm skeptical on these stats as well. The study may not have been done in the most proper manner, and another study was done after the release of the second season, which showed that unaliving actually went down in young teenagers if they finished that second season. Maybe the writing and portrayal was different between the first and second season. To be honest, I haven't actually watched the show, but regardless, I think it highlights just how important it is to consider how these types of shows can affect young teenagers in particular. But why does this big influence of film and TV shows on the perception of mental illness seem to impact young teenagers the most, apart from the
because they're obviously the most impressionable.
Obvious fact that teenagers are much more impressionable and believe more of what is portrayed in the media? Well, I think my relationship with the TV show Dexter.
Do you see how niggas on Twitter hear a trend and run with it? I seen a video of like some GTA shit, right? And it was like, they were like, oh my God, somebody's chasing Clinton or somebody's bus. And niggas under that bitch believing that shit was real, bro. I'm not gonna lie, social media apps aren't real. A lot of you niggas need help. A lot of you niggas need guidance. I'm not afraid for the future, but I know there's not much coming for you niggas, bro. Niggas is getting weaker, dumber, and like it just don't make no sense to me, bro.
Niggas need to start reading.
Niggas just so impressionable. And then the thing is, nobody takes the time to just look some shit up, bro. It don't take that long. You niggas just believe the first thing y'all see. You could just simply Google it, bro.
As a young teenager can help to provide us with
AI
some
fake.
insight. Back when I was around 12 or 13, I didn't really have much of a personality with
Why that nigga blocked his face though?
which I could characterize myself in the world, and I never saw myself as someone who was normal and could fit in. The reality was that I was in fact pretty normal, but I almost didn't want to be. I felt like I was looking at society from the outside in, and no one really understood my subjective
That nigga was wearing Sperry's.
problems. But then I started to watch Dexter, which is a TV show about a serial killer that kills serial killers, and all of this started to change. This show has a very interesting way of getting you to side with this dude who does very bad things to other people. But that's not the part of Dexter that I was focused on, so you can relax now. I don't identify, and I've never identified with that part of him. I was more so attracted to the way the show glamorized his isolated and misunderstood life.
I don't know what made me the way I am, but whatever it was left a hollow place inside.
And so I remember starting to adopt some of the characteristics of the main character, but without the whole needing to kill people part. I pictured myself as this lone,
Shorty know I kill people.
mysterious wolf whom nobody understood, who blended in with the rest of society, but was really an outcast with inconspicuous psychological problems. And I started to say to myself, I can relate to Dexter. He's kind of like me. He's literally me. If you don't understand where I'm getting at with this, let me explain to you the fairly new trend of literally me characters. In TV shows and films, directors and writers do their best at creating characters that the audience can relate to, that actually feel human. And many shows and movies do a great job at this, so much so
Cue the edgy white boy thinking he's the main character of a show.
to the point where the audience starts to see parts of themselves in the character, or at the most extreme, see themselves as the character. Eventually, memes started popping up on places like Facebook in 2018, where someone would post a quote of a character or just a picture of them with the caption, "They are literally me,"
So me started in 2018.
or "He's just like me for real." And when this
Show the Chainsaw Man one.
really started
The Chainsaw Man one is peak. Nigga looking at the camera. Oh my god, he just like me.
to pick
That
up
one is
steam,
peak.
common themes between these characters became apparent. The average male characters often exhibit discontentment with society, struggles with mental health, and an inability to fit in, while the average female characters often dressed alternatively, suffered from traumatic experiences, and isolated themselves from others. When you really examine these
Damn.
characters, the problem with young teenagers identifying with them becomes very clear. Characters like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, and Arthur Fleck in Joker all feature a protagonist who takes the lives of others as an expression of their discontentment with modern society, and often portray characteristics of narcissism, paranoia, and depression. On the surface, this might seem pretty harmless. After all, when I was saying literally me about Dexter, it never had me wanting to do the really severe, terrible things that Dexter did in the show, and all things considered, I think I turned out pretty alright. The evidence that violence in media leads more people to want to commit those violent acts in real life is slim. But some interesting research has been done to show
Become the king in the
exactly
north.
how the brain areas associated with our sense of self react to seeing our favorite characters on screen. In 2021, a study was conducted by Ohio State University to see how our brain connected to fictional characters, particularly with the Game of Thrones series. And they found that the activity in the part of the brain that relates to our sense of self saw a substantial increase when the participant's favorite character was on screen. This suggests that people incorporate these characters into their self-concept, whether they are consciously aware of it or not. So how does this
I am Pluto.
lead to the romantic
If he Pluto, I'm Neptune.
romanticization of depression? Well, for one, even though it seems like a lot of these literally me posts are actually just a joke, are sometimes used as a harmless coping mechanism, and many people don't actually see themselves as Patrick Bateman or the Joker, you have to wonder how much of these memes, which are now even expanding into fancy romanticized edits, are making young kids want to adopt the personality traits of the characters as a way to feel different and cool. Kind of like how I did with Dexter back in 2010. Perhaps these kids have never considered themselves to be anything like these characters before they saw the movies or clips of the movies, but once they saw how big the
I don't know about y'all. I always said I was that nigga.
literally me/Sigma community was, and how it was being romanticized through edits and memes glorifying these characters, they wanted to join this community of outcasts all being miserable together. And in this way, many of these people could try and create or exacerbate the problems that all young teenagers have, like not being taken seriously, feeling lonely, confused, and depressed, as a way to finally fit in with a group or feel like the main character of their own tragic life. It is important, however, to criticize the society that made these characters relevant in the first place. Literally me characters don't just come about due to angsty teens who do not yet know their place in the world. They are a reflection of how much of the youth population feels about society as a whole. Our ability to share almost every experience with our peers in the online realm has brought on a new medium of representation for depression and other mental illnesses. No longer are we forced to formulate our opinions on mental illnesses that we do not understand based on how popular media sources portray them. Now we can get more insight into the day-to-day lives of people who really struggle with these things on a regular basis. This has undoubtedly
And now that has caused motherfuckers everywhere to struggle with these things on a day-to-day basis. Chat, you wonder why depression numbers and all the mental illness things are up? If you want me to be absolutely honest, I really do believe it's because of social media and like technology that we've been introduced to. A lot of people, and this is gonna sound crazy, have a monkey see monkey do type of
Facts.
thing. So if somebody's sad and the group's sad, now we're all sad. You feel me? As long as that's going, it's gonna continue to be a trend. As long as it's wavy to be the sad loner guy who doesn't understand himself, alternative girl who
Doesn't understand himself,
music and smokes cigarettes and likes dark and likes tattoos and all that. It's gonna keep going, bro. You feel me?
brought a lot of pros to the world. There's no longer such a taboo on things like depression because there's much more of an understanding that quite literally everyone goes through some form of sadness, despite the type of appearance most people give off in their everyday lives. People are much more willing to seek help and get treatment than they were just a few decades ago. And perhaps the most positive influence of this
I wonder what that nigga's arguing about. Bro, you eating so much, bro. Stop.
Just a few decades ago. And perhaps the most positive influence of this rise of sharing our negative experiences online is the feeling of knowing you are not alone. This is what built the foundation of my channel here on YouTube. When I started sharing stories of my past and all the shit I did and went through and what I learned from it, that sense of real relatability connected with tons of young people and made them realize, oh, so I'm not the only one that's going through this. And when people realize they aren't the only one
society is becoming a hive mind, that's absolutely what society is.
Going through it, not only does that send off...
Society has always been a hive mind. I would say there was more free thinkers. A lot of people say they're free thinkers now, but a lot of the free thinking they're doing are opinions formulated by somebody else. Not many niggas are really free thinkers. You're like free, like liberalism.
Signals in...
I feel like there are free thinkers. It just... I don't know.
Your brain that lead to an improved mood, but it also makes you realize, well, this person got through it, so that means I might be able to get through it too.
Yeah, Shawty told me similar.